In the heart of Africa, a vast and resource-rich land became synonymous with brutality and exploitation. This land, rich in natural beauty and resources, was the Congo. This was the Congo Free State, not truly free, but rather the personal colony of King Leopold II of Belgium. Leopold's ambitions turned this region into his private empire. From the 1880s, under the guise of philanthropy and progress, Leopold unleashed a reign of terror on the Congolese people. His promises of civilization masked a darker intent. Driven by an insatiable greed for ivory and rubber, Leopold's agents, the force publique, became instruments of unimaginable cruelty. They enforced quotas with ruthless efficiency. Villages were ravaged, men, women and children forced into labor under the threat of mutilation and death. The Congolese lived in constant fear of punishment. The images of severed hands, a chilling testament to the brutality, shocked the world. These horrific acts were meant to enforce compliance and instill terror. International outcry eventually forced Leopold to relinquish his personal fiefdom. The global community could no longer ignore the atrocities. However, the scars of his brutal reign would forever mark the Congo. The land and its people bore the deep wounds of exploitation. The Congo, rich in resources but bleeding under Leopold's exploitation, became a stain on the conscience of Europe. The wealth extracted came at an unimaginable human cost. It was a stark reminder of the dark side of colonialism, where profit was prioritized over human life. The legacy of this exploitation is still felt today. The transition to Belgian state rule in 1908 promised change, but true freedom for the Congolese people remained a distant dream. The shadow of Leopold's reign lingered. In 1908, the Belgian government, facing mounting international pressure, took control of the Congo Free State. This move was seen as a response to the global outcry against the atrocities committed under King Leopold II's personal rule. This marked the beginning of the Belgian Congo, a colony now under the supposed oversight of a parliamentary democracy. The transition was intended to bring about reforms and improve the conditions for the Congolese people. While the transfer of power aimed to address the worst excesses of Leopold's rule, the reality on the ground remained harsh. The promises of better governance often fell short. The Belgian government, while claiming to usher in an era of humane governance, continued to prioritize the exploitation of the Congo's vast natural resources. Economic interests still dominated the agenda. The system of forced labor, while softened in its brutality, continued. The Congolese were still subjected to harsh working conditions and minimal compensation. The Congolese people, denied basic rights and freedoms, were relegated to second-class citizens in their own land. Their voices were largely ignored in the colonial administration. The Belgian administration, in a bid to legitimize their rule, embarked on a campaign to portray their presence as a civilizing mission. They sought to justify their control through propaganda. Schools and hospitals were built, but these efforts were primarily aimed at consolidating Belgian control and fostering a compliant workforce. The benefits to the local population were secondary. The veneer of civilization could not hide the underlying reality of racial segregation, economic exploitation, and the denial of basic human rights that characterized Belgian rule. The struggle for true independence and equality continued. Belgian colonial rule in the Congo was built on a rigid racial hierarchy, a system meticulously designed to maintain control and dominance. At the top stood the white Belgians, a small minority who held all the political and economic power, enjoying privileges and luxuries unavailable to the native population. Below them were the évolués, a small number of Congolese who, through education or service to the Belgians, were granted limited privileges, yet still faced significant discrimination. Yet true equality remained elusive, and the vast majority of Congolese people were relegated to the bottom rung of this social ladder, enduring harsh labor conditions and systemic oppression. This system of racial segregation permeated every aspect of life in the Belgian Congo, creating a deeply divided society. Separate schools, hospitals, and residential areas were established, reinforcing the notion of white superiority and further entrenching the divide. The Congolese were denied access to higher education, effectively barring them from positions of authority within their own country and limiting their opportunities for advancement. This system of enforced inequality bred resentment and sowed the seeds of future conflict as the Congolese people began to resist their subjugation. The Congolese people, denied basic rights and dignity, began to yearn for a future free from Belgian domination, sparking movements for independence. The echoes of this injustice would reverberate long after the Belgian flag was lowered, leaving a lasting impact on the nation's history and identity. Please like and subscribe to emgotvhistory for more stories.